Financial Argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we can see that more and more companies are looking at the economy, looking at their bottom line, looking at what's going on, and they're realizing they just will not be able to make it. And we're seeing a lot of corporations, they're cutting employment right now. They're letting people go. Bombardier is going to be cutting about 7,500 people, and there are going to be more cuts through 2018. We see Intern Automotive Components going to be letting go 500 people. Ford Motor, 13,000 temp layoffs right now. Rexnord Corp, they decided they're going to be moving their jobs to Mexico. Jacobson in Charlotte is going to be letting go 200 people. And we are continually seeing more and more corporations lay off employees because the revenues aren't there, the sales aren't there. And when we look around the country right now, we see that the entire infrastructure of this economy is contracting, and it's accelerating where it's contracting faster and faster. And the central banks right now, the U.S. government, they realize that the economic indicators that we have been looking at, they're deteriorating very, very quickly right now. Most of the indicators are equal to or worse than what they were in 2008. And many of the economic indicators haven't gone anywhere since 2008. They're stagnant. And we're starting to see that auto sales, they're declining right now, which means manufacturing is going to decline even further. Because they're predicting right now that for October, that auto sales is going to drop by more than 7% compared to the same period of last year. And this will be the 6th monthly decline so far this year. And this is not a good situation. Now, I know we're coming up to the holiday season, and retail is a complete disaster. Online, brick and mortar makes no difference, because when people are not working, they just don't have the funds. But we do have to remember something very important, that the commercial real estate loans, about $128 billion worth, more than 1/4 of which went to finance malls a decade ago. Well, they're due to refinance between now and the end of 2017. And Wells Fargo estimates that about $38 billion of these loans were taken out by retailers, and they were bundled into commercial mortgage-backed securities and sold to institutional investors. Morgan Stanley, Deutsche Bank, and other underwriters, well, they have about half of all CMBS maturing in 2017. And the problem is that these retailers, they might have a tough time getting financing on the current terms. Because you have to remember, commercial mortgage debt often only pays off the interest, and the principal must be refinanced. So according to David Witz and Associates, Inc., half of the 1,100 U.S. regional malls will most likely close over the next couple of years. And as we go forward and this holiday season is a complete bust, guess what's going to happen? They're not going to have the revenue from the sales, and that means they're not going to refinance, and that means we're going to see a lot more stores close down. And we can see right now that we're going to see a lot of these malls close down, because as stores leave and they can't refinance, there's no reason to keep them open. And there's a lot of malls that are empty right now. There's a lot of strip malls that are empty right now. So we're looking at a situation right now where everything is happening all at once. And this economy is contracting very quickly. And the central bankers and the U.S. government are very worried about this because they want a controlled demolition of the economy, just like they did 9/11. They want to control it and point the finger someplace else. They don't want this coming down and people say, whoa, wait a minute. You just spent the last 8 years telling us that we're improving. Unemployment is almost at full unemployment. We're almost at full employment, I should say. And you even said that anyone that doesn't agree is peddling fiction. And then all of a sudden the economy crashed. This is why they need to point the finger someplace else, because they don't want to take responsibility for what is about to happen here. So we have David Rosenberg out there, and he's coming up with a decision that we should have helicopter money attached to a $2 trillion perpetual bond, massive infrastructure spending to tackle the $1 trillion student debt load that has seriously brought the economy to its knees. Now, we understand that college students today, they cannot find work. Maybe they can find part-time work, but they're not making the funds, the money that past generations have. They're not going out purchasing homes, going out to retail. They're living with their parents, and they are not in a position to do anything right now. Now, if this gets traction and the central bank resorts to helicopter money or universal basic income or anything like that, buy lots of gold, because that is going to flood the country with currency. If they flood the country with currency, we're going to see the devaluation of the dollar. If we see the devaluation of the dollar, that means inflation, maybe even hyperinflation, as the petrodollar crashes. This is why the central banks, two of them, were saying they don't mind inflation right now. They would like inflation because they know it's time. They know they can't control this anymore. They know the economy is contracting so quickly right now that they need to do something, and they know inflation is coming. And we can see right now, as they're doing this, and as inflation is happening, in the beginning they're going to say, see, everything's working out fine, it's perfect, look at this. And then all of a sudden they're not going to be able to control inflation because other things are going to happen. Because more and more currency will enter the market, the petrodollar will collapse, all those dollars across the ocean will come back to the United States because we've been offshoring all of our inflation over there. And they will not be able to control this. And this is why they're ready and prepared to blame this on someone else. And what we're seeing right now is that central banks and countries, they're quietly dumping U.S. debt. So when we look at this from 2015, we see the debt that countries had was about $3 trillion. It is now down to $2.8 trillion or so. And it's declining very, very rapidly. Because what they're doing is they're continually selling off their debt. And as they sell off their debt, they're actually buying their own debt, national and corporate debt, at a pace of nearly $200 billion per month. So central banks in other countries themselves are looking at this saying, okay, the U.S. is in trouble. We see what is happening here. It's time to take precautions. And we can see right now that they brought the debt level back to where it was in 2012. And in another couple of months, it's going to go lower than that. So we can see right now the rest of the world understands what's going on here. They realize the dollar is doomed, and they are dumping whatever they possibly can. Now, Russia, they have added about 500,000 ounces of gold to their reserves in September. China is continually also adding gold to their reserves because they realize whoever has the gold, well, they're the winner. Everyone that's holding the paper, they're going to be the loser. Now, a new report came out from the Washington Center for Strategic and International Studies on October 13th, and it's called The Kremlin's Playbook, Understanding the Russian Influence in Eastern and Central Europe. And we can see right now that Russia and China, they are making deals around the world. They're looking at different countries. They're going into the country, providing them with funds to help with the infrastructure, building schools, highways, you name it, that's what they're doing. The United States, on the other hand, they're going into countries, creating terrorist groups, bringing in soldiers, garrisoning the country, because many of the countries are saying, we really don't want to work with the United States right now. You're not giving us a good deal. And the BRICS nations, they are actually going around the world and they're making deals. So this report that came out is saying that Russian economic ties with Europe is interpreted as a threat to U.S. national security. And we can see what this is all about. This is a war between central banks. This is a war between currency. This is a war between those individuals that want to keep their power. It has nothing to do with freedom, democracy, or anything like that. This is what this is all about. It all comes down back to economics, with the creation of money, and who will have the control of the creation of money. And this is actually how wars get started. They don't start by chance. The central bankers create and manufacture the entire circumstance. So we can see right now we are headed in this direction. And this is a war, an economic war, if you really look at it. And of course it's going to be a physical war. But we can see right now that's what this is really all about. And we as Americans, people across the ocean in Europe, in UK, in Canada, Australia, and everywhere else, we all need to stand up and say, you know something? We're not going along with this anymore. And if we can all get together and we can all stand up and do this, we can stop from what's happening. Because if millions of people decide, no, we're not doing this, across the world. I mean, look what it has done for the TTIP and CETA. They're having a problem with this because there's protests everywhere. People don't want this. It's not good for the people. Yes, it's good for corporations, it's good for central banks. But the people stood up and said no. And we have to do the same thing with the central banks. We need to get rid of the central banking system. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.